how does stress impact our physical health? Now, this is something that I've thought a lot about, and I've done a lot of research into it. Now, the reason why that is because throughout my burnout journey, I really struggled with my physical health. And I remember thinking to myself, I had this giant cold sore up my face to the point where I looked like Shroom Baratheon from Game of Thrones or the Elephant Man, or for other people who haven't seen Game of Thrones. It was so horrific that it did cover about a quarter of my face. And I remember thinking to myself, if stress is so bad for us, what's the point of it? Like, why do we have such profound impacts to our body? Now, something else that I want you to think about as I'm going through this, I want you to think about this statement, which probably a lot of us have heard, which is stress is the number one killer. Now, I'm not here to say it's not, because I truly believe it is. But we have to understand what happens to our physical health under prolonged stress. But before we get to that and understanding how stress impacts our physical health, we really have to understand what stress does to our body, right? So let's look at the stress response. So we're going to go back and do a bit of a history lesson. So go back in time. We're going to look at the fight or flight response, and we're going to look at when we're hunter-gatherers. So let's say we're hunter-gatherers, we're walking through the desert, and we come across a tiger or a lion or whatever it is, right? Our body automatically responds to that threat, right? It automatically responds to it. So our brain doesn't have to cognitively figure out, is this going to kill us or can we make it our friend? It's just our body is automatically responding to this perceived threat and priming our body to either run away or fight that potential threat. During the fight, flight, or freeze response, our body is dictating what's important and what's not important. So certain things are getting switched on and certain things are getting switched off. So for instance, some of the things that are getting switched on are things like we're releasing adrenaline, we're releasing cortisol, our heart rate is increasing, our blood is flowing differently, and all of it is designed to actually give us energy so we can run away or fight that potential threat, right? So that's something that's really important in the hunter-gatherer example. Fast forward to modern day society, we haven't really evolved past this, so we still have the same physical responses to a perceived threat, whether it's a lion, tiger, or bear, or a message from our loved one, an email from our manager, or an email from a client, whatever it is, right? We still have the same physical response. We just no longer run away or fight that potential threat. We kind of just have that sort of, the adrenaline pumping through our body. Now, if we go back to the hunter-gatherer example, if we think about how long we're in that situation for, so, if we're running away from a lion or a tiger, it's only going to be a short period of time. So we're either going to have run away or fought that potential threat, or we would be dead. That's the other outcome there. However, we're probably only in the fight or flight response for seconds, if not a couple of minutes, and if we're really unfortunate, up to an hour, right? Depending on how strong our endurance is, right? We fast forward to modern day society and we think about our stresses that we have today, right? And what's causing our fight or flight response. Maybe it's not as extreme as running away from a lion, tiger, or bear. However, we're still having those physical responses, right? But our stresses are lasting for such a long period of time. It's not lasting for minutes. It's not lasting for maybe, seconds. It's not lasting upwards to an hour. It's lasting hours, days, weeks, months, maybe a lifetime, right? And because we're not getting back out of the fight or flight response into the opposite, which is what we would call the rest and digest response, we're actually putting a lot of physical strain on our body. Now, as I said before, we have certain things that get switched on and certain things that get switched off. So obviously we said the things that get switched on are adrenaline, cortisol, our heart rate increases, our blood flow changes, all that kind of stuff. But it's really important when we look at what gets switched off. And so this is what's impacting our physical health. So in times of stress, let's look at, there's three things that I look at that get sort of altered or switched off. The first one is our digestive system. So if you were running away from a lion, tiger, or bear, you don't need to be digesting that sandwich that you've just had, right? You are actually going to, stop your digestive tract. And there's a couple of reasons why. First things first, it takes a lot of energy to digest food, but you need that energy to run away or fight that potential threat. And the second thing is it takes a lot of blood flow to the digestive tract to digest food. Again, not essential right now. We need to remove that blood flow to our arms and legs so we have the energy to run away or fight that potential threat. So this is actually lowering our digestive tract. So This is a big reason why we're seeing a huge influx of people having gut health issues. So like IBS, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, allergies, intolerances, they're all sort of linked together here. And it's having that really big impact to our gut health. Now, gut health I can talk about for hours, which I won't do. I'll do that in another video. But our gut health is also extremely important for our physical and mental health as well. So that's one area that's really impacting our physical health. Now, the second thing that stress does, or the second thing that happens in stress that gets switched off, is our immune system. So think about it like this. I want you to think about a time when you've booked a holiday or you've got time off from work. Maybe you've worked really, really hard. You've had to sort of work late, get up early just to get your work done so you can go on holidays. And there's reasons why that shouldn't be a thing, but we're not going to go down that today. But that's what you've done. And then what happens on the first few days of your holiday? Do you get sick? Do you get run down? All of these things do happen. Now, the reason why this happens is because when we're in times of stress, we don't really need to be fighting bacteria or viruses or infections or whatever is coming along our way, right? We don't need to do that. So if we're running away from a lion, tiger, or bear and we come across a virus, it's like, it takes a lot of energy to sort of deal with that virus or bacteria or whatever it is, right? We kind of just go, we'll deal with it when we're back in the rest and digest response. So then what happens is we sort of, keep picking up viruses, keep picking up bacteria because we're in a stressful situation for a prolonged period of time. Then when we finally get to a point where we get to relax and we get into a state of calm, our body can then finally fight our, those infections. Now, if we do not, if we keep having our suppressed immune system for that prolonged period of time, it's also going to impact, which is the third thing that happens in times of stress, is our inflammatory response. Now, inflammation is linked to nearly every single lifestyle disease, if not every single lifestyle disease. So like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, strokes, all of that, it's all linked to inflammation. In times of stress, we are more likely to release inflammatory markers throughout our body, and so we can have inappropriate inflammation throughout the body. So for instance, some people might get sore and swollen joints, some people might get psoriasis, some people might have an autoimmune reaction. All of these things can happen in times of prolonged stress. And also, obviously, if inflammation is linked to things like cancer, heart disease, all of those things, that's why stress is linked to those types of lifestyle diseases. So this is why it's really, really important that we do make sure that we make stress management really important. I do think in society, we kind of put stress management at like a low level thing that we need to deal with because, stress is a part of everyday life. We don't really need to deal with that because it's a part of everyday life. At the end of the day, stress is a part of everyday life. I can't tell you, morally that I can help you get rid of all your stress. No, because that's not true. Stress is a part of everyday life, but we need to find the best ways to manage it. So let's look at some of the things that we can do to help mitigate the impact that stress has on our physical well-being, right? First things first is to make sure that we change our relationship with stress. So if we are consistently under stress and we are ignoring it and we're not focusing on appropriate coping mechanisms and we kind of just keep pushing it to the back, or maybe your future me going like, future me can deal with that. This can obviously create a foundation where you're constantly under stress because you're constantly not dealing with the stress that you need to be dealing with. So that's the first thing. Change your relationship with stress. Make it a priority to actually make sure that you are managing your stress appropriately, removing it if you can, and then learning how to deal with it if you can't, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure that you are doing the basics. So make sure that you are getting enough sleep. Sleep is one of those things that can really, really help sort of reset stressful situations. It's also really important to restore the body as well as restore our emotional and mental well-being as well. So making sure that you're getting good quality sleep. Making sure that you are eating healthy foods. Obviously, if we have inflammation throughout the body, certain foods that we eat can obviously cause inflammation as well, or make that inflammation a little bit worse, or cause, digestive health issues as well. So we want to make sure that we're eating whole food, reducing processed foods, things like that, drinking enough water, limiting alcohol, limiting caffeine, all that kind of stuff, right? And then obviously making sure that we're doing the right exercise for us. So what I mean by the right exercise for us and meeting ourselves where we're at is making sure that the exercise that you're doing is right for you right then. So for instance, if you're extremely burnt out, in no way, shape or form should you be going to the gym for like an hour and a half and smashing out like a heavy weight session and doing like, you know, crazy amounts of cardio. No, maybe you should be doing something gentle like yoga or going for a walk or stretching, all those kind of things. But if you are somebody that might not be burnt out, using exercise as a way to help manage stress can be really important. So exercise can actually help release endorphins, which are a really good happy hormone, but it also helps reduce that cortisol as well. So that's something physically you can do. So making sure that you're doing, you know, even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes of exercise, you know, 3 days a week, that can be really, really useful. So that's how stress can impact our body and why it is the number one killer. Now, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. More than happy to answer any questions. If you haven't already taken the burnout score, make sure you take the burnout score and follow me on other socials as well. I've always got some other stress information going out there as well.